All right, guys, welcome back to Speed Up and Get Your Hits podcast. I think this is episode 31. If you're just finding the podcast for the first time, welcome. This is just a podcast by some shooters and shooting instructors about shooting and mostly how to get better in training and that sort of stuff. We hope the conversations are educational. My name is Billy. I'm with SpecTrain. As always, I've got Nick from Velox Training Group and Brennan of Gateway Defense with me. Thanks for being here, fellas. And we're all three full-time firearms instructors traveling around the country teaching shooting. Fellas, what do you have? What you got open in the near future that's got slots open that folks should know about?
I've got two in the near future that have slots open. One is in Boise, Idaho. That is a concealed class, so it's all concealed pistol for 2 days. Super fun. And then the other one is at the Ben Franklin Range in PA. That is a pistol class, or sorry, that's a pistol/rifle class. I am away from my computer, but if you go on
Yeah.
veloxtraininggroup.com and click the register button, you can see where I'm going to be at, and you'll be able to see the dates of those two classes specifically.
Sweet. Brandon, what you got, bro?
Yeah. So depending on when this podcast comes out, I assume in a few days here, it'll be about a week out, but I'm coming to Charlotte, North Carolina. So Billy's stomping grounds, teaching a AIWB pistol performance class with Gil from Fortitude Consulting. It's going to be indoors at the Lake Norman range, which I know you shoot that match quite a bit, Billy, right? So we're going to be doing that for 2 days on July 27th, 28th. And then after that, the next one is honestly in California, out in the San Jose area. So been to SoCal this spring, and so then going up a little bit farther north to San Jose. So that's in the very end of August 30th and 31st. So still got some spots open for that. So East Coast and West Coast, next two classes coming up.
Very good. Last shameless plug. Thanks for hanging in here, folks. We're Level Up Pistol. I've actually got some slots still open next weekend in North Carolina, one slot in Ohio. Then we've got Michigan and Oregon still coming up that still have slots. Everything else is sold out. Very good. We are just coming off of Carry Optics Nationals, and oh my goodness, was that an awesome experience? We had an awesome time shooting together as a squad with the rest of the Howitzer folks. Really cool match. For those that are not familiar with how that runs, a lot of major matches have a bunch of different equipment divisions. So if you're shooting, a revolver, or you're obviously not going head to head with, open shooters and that sort of thing. And what that results in is a lot of times you have a lot of like really good top shooters there that aren't necessarily competing directly because they're in different divisions. And in some cases, folks are sort of hiding from each other on purpose and that sort of thing. The match we just went to was Carry Optics National, so it was a single division only. We were all shooting essentially the guns that we all carry, right? I mean, striker fired pistols with dots on them, basic stuff, a lot of fun, and 500 plus shooters from all over the world. In this case, some of the best guys to ever do it, and we were fortunate enough not only to shoot in the match and walk away with some stuff from that, but also to on all 3 days watch some of the top guys in the world do their thing. And so I thought it'd be good for us to kind of do a debrief episode, not only kind of on our experiences and so forth, things that we took away, things we learned, maybe some training we'll be doing moving forward, but also maybe what we learned just from the match in general, watching the big boys, so on and so forth. And so with that, fellas, I know we have a lot to cover, but I'll kind of open the floor for first impressions, or what were your big notes or takeaways from Carry Optics Nationals?
Man, I have so many. I could probably do like the entire podcast by myself. This was my first Carry Optics Nationals.
Yep.
What I noticed is like you'll hear people tell you like, oh, it's going to be like this or that. You should be focusing on, this or that or the other thing. Like, but I think training strategies are going to differ a whole lot from person to person, depending on, that person's personality, how they shoot, their style and whatnot. So I think in that aspect, it was very difficult for me. Like I thought it was going to be one way, and then I got there and was like, oh no, this is completely different than what I thought it was going to be.
How so?
Well, I think one mistake that I made right off the bat was I looked at the matchbook and I was like, oh, there's a lot of open targets. These look close, but if you look in the matchbook, at least from what I've seen, like it doesn't really tell you the distances of these things. So it looked like a bunch of open targets. So like I started, doing a bunch of kind of hoser stuff the last 2 weeks. And then we get there and stage 20 has a 35-yard partial on it. And by partial, it's a classic target and there's maybe a quarter of the A zone sticking out. Like it was, or maybe a third. Maybe it was just a third of the A zone. But on a classic target, like that's not a whole lot.
Yeah, so just for people that maybe not picturing it, we had maybe, what do you think, 3 inches by 3 inches of A zone to shoot at, something like that at
yes.
most.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about that target specifically, like right off the bat, like you might think, all right, that's pretty hard. But like most guns at 25, I think a 2-inch group at 25 is pretty good, like mechanical accuracy. So if you're thinking about a 3 to 4-inch group at 35, while you're running around a stage, like I thought that was a very, very difficult challenge. Not bitching
100%.
about it. Like I think, at nationals, there needs to be a widespread of challenges and different types of skills that it tests. I think that was good. But like that on the first stage, I was like, holy moly.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Seiler had 2 mics on that target.
Right. Well,
so it was a challenging one for sure. No doubt about it.
Yeah. So like my experience on that target, like I came to it and I was like, all right, dummy, that's a really hard target. Like you need to make sure the dot is centered. And so I centered the dot, but like with it being nationals, like being, the nerves on the first stage were a lot higher than what I thought they would be. And so like I sent the first one, I'm like, yep, that one's good. And then I watched the dot like return from the bottom instead of the top. It's like I shoved on the gun so hard.
Yeah.
Just with the nerves, and then the next one just went straight into the Noe. So, like I started losing a little bit of confidence on some targets. And so it was just like, all right, turtle mode, let's just like hit stuff, which is obviously not the way to go. So I think like right off the bat, what I noticed is like, I need to be a lot more, not only more well-rounded, like I need to do a lot of these skills better. Maybe not perfect each one, but like maybe just be like good at each one, each different skill that gets tested at nationals. But there needs to be some sort of plan that is like specific to me to deal with nerves. Like on the first stage, make ready, I was like, oh, I don't feel a whole lot. Like this feels kind of normal, and by the time I got to like the second or third position, it was just like, holy shit, dude. Like I'm at nationals, people are watching me like this. It just felt a whole lot heavier than anywhere else. And you're there for 3 days doing that. So like, I will definitely have something that is personal to me that I can deal with that stuff. Because talking to a bunch of different people there, like dudes in the super squad have something different. Like every single one of them are like, yeah, like the nerves never go away. They actually get worse the better you get. And like, you just have to figure out ways to deal with it that are specific to you. So that is definitely one thing that I'll be working on that I think is going to help out a lot next year.
And I'm sitting here taking notes because you hit on a lot of things that I think would be really key for folks to maybe drill down on a little bit. So the matchbook, I think, was the first thing you kind of brought up, and how that can be misleading. And I think that's super important to mention for folks that want to go to major matches, right? Actually, in my opinion, this was probably one of the most accurate matchbooks of a nationals that I've been to. Huge shout out to Matt Hopkins for coordinating the stages. A lot of really, really solid stages. I enjoyed them a lot, and to Todd Holmes for the way they were built out and put on a great match. But man, I have been to majors where like there wasn't one stage that had the same start position as what's written in the matchbook. Like some of them are really, really bad about that. This one wasn't super bad. But obviously, the stages when they get on the ground are going to probably look a little bit different than they look in the matchbook. So like some folks, I literally have folks like send me stages from a match they're about to go to, and they'll be like, hey, what would your plan be on this stage or whatever? And I'm like, I wouldn't even be thinking that way if I was going to that match, right? I think that stage planning from the matchbook's obviously a huge mistake. Mainly all I do from the matchbook is mainly look for like unique challenges that maybe I don't train very heavily, that I may want to pick up on if it's going to be a big deal, whether that's, a lot of strong hand, weak hand, whether it's, an unusual target presentation, whether it's, a weird, like, hey, there's a bunch of unloaded starts, whatever it is, things like that you'll see in the matchbook and be like, maybe I should do some extra training on that. I did, as an example, leading up to this match, I did, a day of prone work because I saw we had a stage where there was going to be some prone shooting, that kind of thing. That's obviously not something that I train for very often, is prone shooting with a pistol. I was like, maybe we ought to figure this out. So that's the kind of stuff that I look for. Other than that, I pretty much try to ignore it and do all the planning on the ground. I don't know if obviously you have some takeaways from that, Nick, in kind of the first match of that sort, but I don't know, Brennan, if you do anything differently, or what's your guys' thoughts on, like, what should folks be looking for in the matchbook?
Yeah, I mean, I do all the same things as you, Billy. I also just kind of look for, how many field courses do we have? Are there any like short courses and that type of thing? So like to Nick's point, kind of looking at the matchbook and kind of thinking, oh, maybe there's some like more hosiery style. If it's only a stage that has, I don't know, 12 to 18 rounds, it probably is going to be more of a hoser style. So I'm generally looking at that type of stuff. And then, like Billy was saying, like if it is a major and it's, lots of unloaded starts or something like that, I really don't practice that stuff. I probably should quite a bit more. It's just so easy to do in dry fire, but I just don't. So yeah, I kind of try to take a look at like, is it mostly field courses? How many short courses are there? I mean, for instance, at nationals, I mean, there were hardly any short courses. I mean, there were a couple, the fixed time stage. Yeah, the fixed time stage, and then the one that was on that same bay with a door and the swinger. That was only maybe 16 rounds or something. Maybe one other, right?
Yeah,
but everything else was
essentially
long.
four. Yeah, essentially
Yeah.
four of them. It was the two split stages, really.
But everything else was like 150, 160 points minimum. Like they were all pretty long. So that also, I think, can inform your training as well. Like, all right, like I'm going to do some more complicated stuff. Like I'm going to make sure I can stay with it for, a 6 position shooting drill or something like that. And versus just, a basic, shoot inside this box, or, just a shuffle step and it's 2 or 3 positions. So I'll look at that stuff too. But yeah, I try not to plan anything off of the matchbook. I've learned that from experience as well.
Yep. 100%. So that leads right into the kind of, I think, the well-rounded thing in the training. Super interesting, particularly this. I think that a lot of people, I'm not sure what your guys' take on this will be, but I feel like a lot of people, even competition shooters, right? A lot of times folks are actually training on challenges that are easier than they're expecting to face. In a match, or when it counts for real, where realistically it should be the opposite. Like, man, if you're going to be shooting 35-yard partials, wouldn't it be nice if you've trained to crush 50-yard partials like in your training, so that when you encounter that thing, it's going to be easy. The other part of that's interesting to me is like exactly what Nick said about like that partial challenge, right? Realistically, I think we all train on difficult targets, distance targets, that sort of thing. But what I see a lot of folks doing is like those what they consider to be like unique challenges or special skills or whatever it is. Like they'll shoot a 50-yard bill drill, but it's in isolation, right?
Yeah.
Where you're static, you're in your perfect stance, you're focused on just that target. You're not stressing about having to make up for the fact that you just, took a makeup shot and now you feel like you have to go faster and like all that kind of stuff, right? It's a whole different challenge when that is just like randomly stuck in the middle of a stage somewhere and you're thinking about a million other different things, right? And so training on longer courses of fire that have those kind of challenges, worked into it, I think are there's a ton of value there for me.
And I think some of the big challenges too on those longer courses is like, I mainly shoot like go shoot matches, right? And like if you look at the majority of the go shoot matches, if there's any sort of sprinting involved, it's probably like maybe 4 to 5 steps. It's not a whole lot of sprinting. There were some stages at nationals, stage 20. I forgot what stage it was, the one that's like shaped like an X. I mean, there were some pretty good sprints there. And, you know, I think that in and of itself presented some challenges. Stage 20, I'll use it as an example, the one with the 35-yard partial. Like if you did it like I did, starting at the back right corner and then trying to work your way essentially around the entire course, by the time you got to that 35-yard partial, and I believe there was a swinger there as well, like I think that was like my third or fourth position. So like I'm already a little out of breath, and now I'm going to shoot a 35-yard partial. So like looking back, I think some of the strategies for, at least for me, like if I had that stage to do over again, I might start on that one and like maybe shoot the popper or the activator and the swinger and then transition up to that 35-yard partial rather than like running around a stage and being a little out of breath by the time I got there. I don't know. I actually think Wanzik did that.
He started in the middle.
Yeah, so he started on that one. Yeah, that's what he told me. Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, you know, it's definitely, you know, the strategy I think on those kind of things changes person to person for sure. You know, for some people you're like, hey, this is a difficult enough challenge that like I'm just trying to survive this thing without a catastrophe happening, right? Just being super careful, like setting myself up for success, like risk management being the focus. Other folks might be like, hey, here's a stage that I can actually like take advantage of what other people are scared of and try to make a move on this thing, you know. So I think that depends, you know, person to person largely, but it's great stuff to be thinking about for sure. That's good. And then of course, like the nerves element, like you said, especially, you know, hey, I was the first shooter on that stage, right? Of our whole match, right? Day one of nationals, we start on that stage, first shooter up, right? How do you deal with, you know, perceived pressure and that sort of things? I heard you saying you heard some interesting things from guys in the super squad. Did you hear anything interesting that as far as different tips or tricks that folks have?
Dude, I've heard everything from like, hey, I smoke a cigar to calm down, to I drink an energy drink to get amped up. Like it's everything, like in between, far side to that, like everything, man. I think for me, I think the thing honestly to do, at least this is what sounds logical now, and I'm going to test this, but is just giving my brain like two things to think about rather than like, holy crap, I'm at nationals and like I think I just mic'd that note, or I just mic'd that freaking partial, or I think I just shot a net. Like, don't think about that stuff. I think like giving my brain like, all right, like it's fine. Just like look at the places where you want the bullets to go, and don't push on the gun when you press the trigger. Just like making it about those two specific things, and like I think just making it more simple than the way I was thinking about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I think when you ask top shooters about the mental game and like stage strategy and that kind of stuff, like you're never going to hear the same thing twice for the most part. And very rarely are any of them going to mention like any of the like popular like mental systems that are being taught like in the sport or using anything anywhere close to being similar to those. And to me, maybe it's not even that those are strictly bad. It's just that like the mental game potentially is one of the most individual aspects. Like you said, shooter. I mean, we have top guys doing things that are literally opposite in terms of getting in the right headspace for it. And I think that's because like, we're coming from different starting places in terms of like, what is if you let the pressure get to you, what's the result going to be? Like, all right, some folks under pressure just want to go fast, some folks just want to collect points, you know, and everything in between, the way that folks kind of react and handle that. And so I think the way that you counteract that has to be different as well. Just like you were saying, like some folks feel like they need to get amped up before a stage, some folks feel like they need to calm down. It's like, okay, what's your natural state of operation, and therefore how do you kind of counteract that?
Well,
in combination with your shooting style, your strengths and weaknesses, like what kind of a stage it is. JJ's so funny. He's a great. I mean, still to this day, all the time before you should stage something, I hear him talking about, well, I need to get nervous real quick. I need to hang on, let me get nervous so I can shoot this. And I'm like, and part of me is like, okay, is that like not what you mean, like English being your second language, or like, you know, but it's funny how people, you know, interpret those kind of feelings differently, and what hurts some folks can actually be helpful to others, which is pretty interesting. To me, it was like the takeaway for me mentally coming into this match is like, okay, pressure to me translates as you need to go faster. Right? When I feel pressure to perform, whether that is in a class demo because one of my students just burned it down and I've got to really go after it now, or whether it's on a stage at nationals and I feel like pressure to perform, like the thing that I want to focus on is, okay, I got to go faster. Right. And so therefore my focus in that moment probably needs to be the exact opposite. And like my whole mental cue for me most of the match was like, all right, we're gonna go in here and try to shoot all alphas. Like that was just like the whole focus, right? And so I don't know if that's helpful to anybody, but figuring out, I think, like, hey, what's your natural reaction to pressure? Like how does that actually translate to action for you? And then really just focusing on probably the opposite of that, I feel like is probably the most healthy for most folks. That's maybe different person to person, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've never felt that amount of pressure at like a local. Like I've felt pressure at locals, you know, like take for instance, like a classifier, right? Like
Yeah.
at one point, like I needed like a 92% to make G, and it was like I step up there and like I feel a little bit of pressure, but it's like even if I felt a ton of pressure, that was only for one stage. It is not the same as a 3-day match.
Sure.
So like, I think, you know, this is one of those things where it's like, you know, a lot of things in shooting like are very like, okay, we're not going to break these core principles. Like everyone would agree, but this pretty much almost everyone is different on like some sort of training strategy, the way that they deal with pressure. Those sort of things are going to like differ from person to person, which is, I mean, the only way to figure it out is it takes experience to go do that stuff.
Yeah, and it's different there too. Like you mentioned the classifier versus the 3-day match. Like what's different there too is like when you inevitably, you know, hose the classifier, right? Because you felt that pressure and tried to go faster than you could see or whatever the case may be. Like it's like, okay, well, you know, that was a little stage, doesn't matter much for the match. Like it's over. I can move on now, right? Versus on that 3-day match, man, if you make a mistake on stage 1, now you've got the next 3 days to think about that. And then, okay, how do we react now, right? Do we just, you know, can we let it go into shoot our plan, shoot our process, like do what you know you need to do, or are you trying to make up for it, or are you giving up, or like, you know, what's your reaction over the next 3 days when you've got, you know, those mistakes looming over you? And no matter how big the mistakes are, like you're never going to shoot a perfect stage. So you're always, I think, you know, especially when you're you know, a good for good shooters especially, you're going to come off that stage with notes, right? Man, that should have done that thing better, whatever it is, right? So you're always going to have that, and learning to, you know, let that go, move on, and not let it, you know, impact your continuing performance is a huge challenge, I think, especially the longer matches for sure.
Yeah, I had a lot of takeaways as well. This is my second nationals. First nationals was I think pretty typical for like a first nationals performance. Like just the match went pretty terribly. And yeah, I think I honestly, like, I saw myself dealing with a lot of the same stuff that like Nick saw, like with nerves and stuff like last year. This year, the nerves were not as nearly as big of a deal for me, which is great. But there were just like a ton of shooting stuff that I like need so much improvement on. We already kind of talked about like just some of the distance stuff and making targets even harder than we already are. I think I've done a pretty good job of that in the past year or so. You know, really forcing myself to shoot like, you know, presentations that aren't even legal in USPSA, right? You know, there's restrictions on that, how much the A zone can be showing or whatever. And so taking some of those and just kind of making them ridiculously hard, and then still not allowing yourself to hit the no shoot or anything like that. So was pretty happy with my points collection. I think that was a big takeaway for me on the positive side. One thing I will say, when you're diagnosing, and just for anybody who's listening, when you're diagnosing yourself at a match, to only come away with negatives is, I think, not like the greatest thing, because like I feel like I didn't really have anything good to say about my performance last year at nationals, right? But since then, I've been doing a lot of work and getting better at some of those stuff that I initially kind of identified that, okay, this stuff needs work. And I've been happy with the progress that I've been making, right? And so if you've been working for a year at something like that and you go into the match and let's say you do that one thing good, so points collection like on the targets, but let's say, 4 or 5 other things were just kind of trash. If you just walk away thinking about that stuff, like, oh man, my movement sucks, my transitions suck, this sucks. But in reality, you had a great match in another sense of the word, like from another standpoint. I think that's important to note, at least for me. It helps my confidence a lot going into other majors and things like that. I've seen that in the last like 3 or 4 majors that I've shot. So anyways, was super happy with my points collection. I only had 5 stages. My goal was to shoot over 90% of the points on every single stage. 5 of the 20 stages, I shot sub 90. A couple of those were like 88. Like I had an 86, 88, 2 89s, and a 77% of the points. Everything else was well over that 90% mark of points collection. I was super happy about that. However, what I have noticed is
it was like you were like well over 90 overall for the match, right? You crushed the points.
Overall.
What did you shoot overall? It's like close to 95,
92.
wasn't it?
92.
92.
Yep.
Yeah, that was great.
Yep. So I was,
Nice.
Again, super happy with that. And because I've done a lot of work on that, right? So I was happy to see that pay off and not get like lax on that as we went. Obviously, our first day was a lot of those tough, long range targets. But I was really hoping that wouldn't go away because that kind of forces you into points collection mode, right? But then as you get some targets that are easier, closer up, they're opens, that's where I tend to actually drop more points than everybody else because I quit respecting those targets. In that kind of vein, though, I think that I went. I was not happy with my speed. So like overall raw times were just way too slow. So a couple things that I'm going to do working on that, like big places where I saw I was losing a lot of time was like on every single entry. So let's say you're coming into a position, maybe the hard left side of the fault lines, and you've got a wall and you've got to kind of have like a slight lean around that wall to shoot, 2 or 3 targets. So I'd come into the position good. My footwork would be good. The gun would be up. I'd be ready to shoot on camera. It looks great. But then I'm just hanging out there on target, waiting to see something better than what I see already, right? And so I think that I have maybe prioritized some of the technique stuff with movement more than the goal, which is getting that shot on target as quickly as possible, right? I've maybe overemphasized things like stability, things like that, which stability is great, right? But if you can still take the shot and get alphas and you're not perfectly settled, but you're going to shave off half a second to a second on that entry, like you should definitely be doing that. I can't afford to lose that kind of time to people, especially when there's multiple positions like that. So that was something I identified. So I think the way I'm going to work on that going forward is just honestly putting some stuff on the clock and doing things multiple times. Like I've been trying to kind of avoid that recently, and kind of like we've all done the thing where we drop the par time for like our draw to see if we can get our draw faster. And it's probably been a really long time since like any of the 3 of us have done any sort of work like with that. But I think I could stand to use a lot of work on, okay, start here on the beep, run over, attack this, fault line, shoot around the wall and put two rounds into a 10-yard target, right? An open target. How fast can I actually move? How fast can I put rounds on target? And then boil that down to how fast can I actually consistently get alphas? Because my on-demand performance right now for that is just too slow. So I think I'm going to do a lot of that type of stuff to start just realizing how that feels, that basic kind of speed inoculation stuff that we talk about all the time. And then last thing I think is just kind of with stage planning. The stage plan for me needs to be what I can do. It cannot be somebody else's stage plan, even if it might be a better stage plan or a slightly more efficient stage plan. Maybe it's more efficient, but it's more risky on a target, and I need to take less risks or something like that, right? This really got kind of driven home for me talking to Eric about one of the stages he was about to shoot. I asked him, I said, hey man, are you going to take those steel targets on the move? these big poppers. And he just looked at me and goes, no. I said, why not? And he goes, well, with the way I'm shooting today, like that's just not the move. Right. And I was like, okay, so on a day where he was locked in, everything was like really ticking, he's super happy with himself, he might do that. Right. That might be, the way to go on that. But for him, with how much was at stake for him, I imagine a tremendous amount of pressure as well, because everybody's kind of looking at him, right? He was just like, no, not worth it. And so he chose a different stage plan and shot it, just fine. So that was definitely something that I took away. And that can be a lot of pressure, just kind of hanging out with the guys on your squad, talking stage plans, and feeling like you have to change it to match somebody else's. Being confident about what you can do, right? I think that's important. Yeah, and then the last thing was just external factors can mess with your headspace quite a bit. So on day 2, Buck Lawler got DQ'd on something that I was like really confused about, and what I was like we were all trying to kind of figure out like what rule are they quoting to actually make this happen, because like I'd never seen or heard of that before, and I was trying to make it make sense with AIWB and all this crap, and so I was like really pissed for him, because obviously he was getting DQ'd at the beginning of day 2, and this is a huge match for him, obviously, like it is for the rest of us. I couldn't imagine getting DQ'd. Like that was just sounded terrible, especially for something that wasn't unsafe. And so I let that kind of mess with my head for about 3 stages, and I was really distracted after every stage I would shoot. Like I'd go back, I'm talking to Buck, I'm talking to the ROs, I'm looking up rules, all these things, and that really messed with me for 3 or 4 stages, right? And I think that I need to work on, just being able to kind of clear my head of that. And just, it's kind of, I call it mental fortitude. It's just being able to lock back into what we're doing, shoot the thing that we're doing. And just kind of not letting that stuff really bother you to the extent where it's going to mess up your shooting. Right. So that was just a little thing that came up. I wasn't expecting it to come up, but it definitely affected my match performance, and kind of got me off to a rocky start that day. It is what it is, right? But I think there's some work I can do, just kind of mentally just staying in a better headspace when that type of stuff happens.
That was a rough stage, man. Stage 1.
Was. Yep.
And like just being real, the ROs on that stage, let's just say weren't the nicest. Like they were pretty freaking rough. Like I got yelled at, Billy got yelled at, and I'm like, dude, like none of that needed to happen. Like, if you're trying to stay in like the right headspace to compete, like, I don't know, dude's getting yelled at. I just want to be like, dude, just take a deep breath, buddy. Like, you don't have to be that much of a dick.
Yeah, definitely. That happened last year at Nats too. I think it was actually on day 3, maybe. But a dude on our squad got DQ'd, and it was just kind of like after that, like my whole attitude changed, and almost the way that I shot the stage or was thinking about the stage changed as well. Cause I'm like, well, I better not like repeat what he did, even though like it probably never would have happened. Right. Cause he did something that was like clearly, a 180 break. Right. And it's just a body positioning thing. So I don't think I would have done that, but you start thinking about it and it just starts like, if that's what takes over your thoughts, man, like, well, now you're not going to be thinking about execution as well.
Yeah. Those ROs were all amped up. Like the one yelled at Billy for talking about a score. I was like, geez, man.
Really?
Like everyone
I don't even
calm down.
I must have just erased that from my head. I don't even remember that.
Someone asked you, the dude it was Bailey who just shot. He was like, Billy, what's on that target? And you were like, Alpha Charlie.
Oh yeah,
like,
I do know what you're talking about now.
Scoring around here.
Yes.
Oh,
yes. Dude, cool your tits, man. Like, calm down.
I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
That's funny.
It's unfortunate, man. The obviously tons of respect and appreciation for all the volunteer staff at a match like that and what they do. But man, those squads, it is interesting how differing the experience can be going from stage to stage. And sometimes the staff on a stage can absolutely help put you in a better headspace than you arrived with, right? And can be just like really awesome to be around and just have a good time. And then it can absolutely be the opposite as well. But whether it's that or whether it's something else, man, it is tough. I've been through that at several majors, whether it is, personal family things that are going on at the same time, whether it's things that are happening to other shooters, whether it's the staff, whether it's, I mean, I've been called for an absolutely bogus DQ before. That DQ was overturned, and now you have to sit there and reshoot that stage. Like, man, you want to talk about like entering it in a weird headspace? Like that kind of stuff happens. Even like little things that'll happen, like when you're making ready at the beginning of a stage, and the RO wants to fuss about your start position or say that, well, that's not what standing up straight looks like or whatever it is. And like, that kind of stuff can really, can screw with it for sure. And learning to, like you said, Brennan, just to kind of clear the mind and focus on what you need to focus on is huge for sure. But it's definitely easier said than done, I would say.
Yep.
For sure. Yeah, it was good. I had a great time over the 3 days. Was definitely happy with some of the things. It was really a massive change in focus for me that I think showed me a lot in terms of what styles really work for me and what doesn't. Managed to shoot also 90%, over 90% of the points. Shot it essentially penalty free, except for one stage, which I'm pretty sure I didn't deserve all of that. But anyway, that's a whole other discussion. Other than that, shot the whole rest of the match penalty free. So those are some good takeaways. The stages that I probably did best on for the match were the stages that I typically would have thought of as being the opposite of what like my strengths are. I would say that if I'm known for anything, it's the up fast hosiery type stuff, right? That's what I like to do and enjoy, and would typically think that I'm good at. The two stages that I did the best on, one was a stage win, the other one was a top 5. Were the two most difficult stages in the match, 10 and 20, with those 35 plus yard partials and that kind of stuff. And so that to me was like that showed, I think, a payoff from essentially my training for the match was about taking my weaknesses and turning them into strengths and focusing on the right things and just collecting points instead of thinking about the speed. Again, for me, I think that your mental game on those stages has got to obviously take into account what your strengths and weaknesses are. I think my strengths are the speed. Like for me, I don't need to focus on those things. I don't need to be focusing on going faster, being more aggressive, like running hard from one point to another. Like those are not the things I need to be focusing on. I need to be focusing on, visual discipline essentially, and collecting those points. I think that so I was pretty much able to do that consistently over the 3 days. Didn't change my strategy at all, which was another win for me. That's something that I have been guilty of doing, in the past, is like looking, whether it's a result of looking at scores or just seeing how other people are shooting stages, whatever it is, coming off a stage and be like, man, okay, that was good, but I need to be going faster, or I need to be doing this, I need to be doing that. And I think I did a pretty good job of the 3 days, just shooting the plan I showed up with, and worked out pretty good. I think for me, the big takeaways, I think going into next year and what we'll be experimenting with in training, I think probably a bigger focus. I think I'm finally to the point in the shooting where the athletics of it are going to start getting a little bit more focused this year, for sure. And then being what's really difficult for me is I would say selective aggression in a sense. So like if I you know have a section of a stage where I want it's appropriate for me to shoot really aggressively, and I don't even necessarily mean fast. When I say shoot aggressively, I mean like shoot on the edge of what I feel I can do, just because it's an appropriate place to do it. That mindset tends to leach into the rest of the stage, right? And you start being aggressive in places where you shouldn't be aggressive. And so I think what's going to be a big focus for me is like, hey, let's see if we can't like keep that same points collection sort of mindset and stage strategy like as the default, but then have places on the stage where we can shoot really super aggressively in selective spots when we need to, where it's appropriate, where it's actually going to win you something, and then immediately switch that throttle back to kind of that default points collection mode without letting the two kind of bleed into each other. And that to me is where that little bit of time savings needs to come from in a few places with essentially the same points. So I think that's probably the two big things I'll be thinking about working on.
What do
And I
you?
think,
Go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead.
I think in regards to what you said about the athletic thing, you know, I always knew like, hey, like move as aggressively as possible, but like you never really see it until you stand in front of the super squad and you watch those dudes move. Like I've watched those guys on like YouTube and stuff, but like my first time seeing those guys actually move was at nationals, and I was like, holy moly. This is significantly faster and more aggressive than like what the majority of people are doing here in regards to
Yep.
movement. So like, dude, when I left, like my quads were sore. Like I went home, bought kettlebells. I was like, that will never happen ever again. Like I am building tree trunks for thighs for next year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting on several levels. You know, I think number one, the sport's changing. It's becoming more and more of a sport every year. You know, in the sense that just the level of it, you know, it used to be that you could be a 300-pound dude and like win nationals.
I don't think so anymore.
I mean, we essentially sat there and watched 3 super squads, if you will, at this match.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's a single person on any one of those squads that you would describe as like remotely overweight, to be honest. Like not all of them are like JJ level athletes, right? But like there's a certain level of athleticism that I think is now required to be at least competitive, you know, in the top, let's say 5% or so.
Yep.
That didn't used to be there. And so that's interesting to observe. It's also interesting just from the match standpoint. You know, most, like you were saying, Nick, most of the movement we do in USPSA is those, at least, you know, most of the matches I've seen across the country are those. Hey, let's do 4 steps max, right?
Yes.
You know, but mostly 2 to 3 step type stuff. But man, the majors on the major fields tend to be at bigger, more spread out ranges where you have a lot more room for activities. You can have bigger stages, and that obviously leads to more movement, longer movements. And the longer the movement is, the more that needle shifts towards actually moving quickly being important.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the efficiency of the entry and the exit and all that is still super important, but the farther the movement is, the more the actual traverse starts to matter. So
The exits specifically, like from like the one thing I notice is like when those dudes leave out of a position, it's the most aggressive shit you've ever seen in your life. Obviously, like entering into a position, they're trying to do it softly and all that stuff. But the exit, I was like, that was the one big takeaway for me. I was like,
Yes.
I need to do that way harder than when I'm doing it now.
And not a lot of leaning exits from the guys that I watched. Like not a lot of this kind of like gently fall out of position, you know, run 3 steps, pop the gun back up. It's like stay here, like planted, boom, 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 and they just like gravel sprays out from behind them, and they go 4 steps. Right. And it's like, oh dang, like I would probably approach that like, oh, I'll just take like a gentle lean, like fall out of position, replace my like shuffle, replace my feet, whatever. Boom, here I am, like zero effort essentially. And that was never the case for any bit of movement that any of those dudes did. which is pretty telling. For sure. What are you guys doing to try to plan on like improving the athleticism part? Billy, I know you said you're going to work on that, like, and then obviously Nick like went and bought kettlebells. So what are you guys planning on trying to do to actually work on that part?
Yeah, I have like a whole like little workout thing that we do every night. My wife and I, we go work out. Like basic stuff, right? Like I'm not like deadlifting 400 pounds, none of that stuff. Like just like basic, like trying to tone my legs, and then for like the cardio stuff, just doing sprints from like cone to cone. I think they call it like shuttle runs or whatever. It sucks, but like
Yep.
just trying to push really really hard. for those short amount of like sprint, short type of sprints, like trying to be very aggressive on that stuff. So.
Yeah,
Cool.
I mean, I'm happy. I'm by no means an expert in this stuff. I've done a handful of things over the years that have been really helpful. It's just that I have got to buckle down. I'm finally working less jobs than I have in a long time. And so hopefully I need to just rework the schedule a little bit and actually focus on some of the stuff a little bit more. I think the focus for me is in a few categories. I actually do think like the strength stuff is super helpful, like strength specific work, power specific work. Stuff like, barbell squats, like makes you feel way more comfortable, like being low in your stance for a long time and that sort of stuff. And that's if I like doing anything in working out, that's the stuff I like doing. Like Nick said, the explosiveness stuff, the agility stuff, all that's really good. And then I do think the more longer form cardio is useful as well, just from a standpoint of just maintaining energy levels. Um, you know, uh, you don't want to be feeling tired on stage 6 of your day, right? You want to still be feeling full of energy and as ready to shoot as you did on the first stage. And so all of that stuff has value, I think.
Cool. I like it.
Cool. What else you guys got? Anything else? What was anything else? I'm always curious about this stuff, Nick. Anything else that was like you were expecting nationals to be one way and it was something else, or anything surprising about, like, whether it's just match flow or anything that new folks might encounter they would not expect?
Wait, real quick. I have one. That port
Okay.
was way smaller than I thought it was going to be.
Oh,
Like,
the prone port.
Yes, I've shot through ports like a lot, right? And usually, like, or so, right? This one was like, so something that happened to me. I'll just talk about it. So something that happened to me on my very last shot. My SRO hit the wall, and it caused a failure to eject. Right, like my casing got stuck. So I went to like tap rack, and I got a double feed. And so stupidly, I cleared it and took one more shot because I did 2 alpha, 1 on each steel, 1 alpha. I needed just one more, and I got that malfunction, and it took me 8 seconds to clear it. And then I took another shot, which is retarded. So anyways, that was very upsetting to me. But yeah, like, prone shooting, not that big of a deal to me. Like, a lot of guys were freaking out about that. It's like, whatever, man, just like lay down. But that port was like really freaking tiny. So apparently I need to work on shooting through very small ports at some point.
No,
yeah, it was interesting because, like, and there too, it's like they had it set up like perfectly to be as difficult as possible, in the sense of, I don't know that I encountered for that as well as I should have either, in the sense of, like, you could obviously get down prone and look through that port when you were walking the stage, but you didn't have your gun out. And so it's somewhat difficult to quantify, like, where exactly is my gun gonna be? And obviously, I think, all of us try to under penetrate ports whenever we can. Like, there's no reason to stick your gun like through a wall usually.
Yeah.
But like in that case, because of, like, you were kind of blocked from being any farther back away from that port, like, you kind of had to stick it in there, right? Which led to the issues you're talking about. And so that's something I didn't think about in the walkthrough either.
And you got a better view of all the targets as well, the farther you got, right? And so, like, it made sense to get closer. But yeah, like, and then also, like, your 140 mil mag, right? Like, that also makes the gun tall as well. Mm-hmm. So you're doing that, and then you're also like supporting yourself on your elbows. And for me, I was also rolling kind of around like this on my very last shot. I kind of like went all the way up on one elbow instead. And yeah, it was just, just kind of interesting, kind of a gimmick, right? Kind of not like, that doesn't define who you are as a shooter or whether or not you're good at shooting, but it's something to take into consideration when you plan that type of stuff. And I was not expecting it to be like an 18-inch by 18-inch port. So anyways,
I think stages like that, like, I think sometimes people could get wrapped up in like, oh, like I had to hold a tennis ball and a tennis racket in the beginning of this thing, and I had to go prone, and like I'm gonna practice all, like I don't real talk, I'm probably not gonna practice any of that stuff, because there's just way more important stuff than practicing that. But
Well, it's wild even on the stage where, like, people's mental focus is, right? And I apologize if I'm
yeah,
talking crap about somebody who's listening, but, like, somebody was coming up to me before the match, was like, "Oh," before we ran the stage, was like, "Oh, did you see how, like, so and so, like, did this in the start position? He, like, had his hand on the ball, but his hand was, like, close to the gun or whatever, so his draw was faster." I'm like, "Bro, my draw is gonna be fast no matter what. I don't really care." Like, that's not what I'm worried about. Like, I'm worried about, like, how am I gonna, engage these targets and stuff. But yeah, those gimmicks can be really distracting for sure.
Yeah. Especially if you've never seen them before. Or you've never like had to work around those things. And I think the best thing is just kind of ignore those, do what's required of you. And if the RO's over there making a big stink about how exactly you're holding the paddle, because I think that's where that conversation came up from, was we watched another squad have to go back and reshoot because they started not touching, like it was like right hand gripping the paddle and they were like barely holding on to it. And they're like, well, that's not grip. It was some dumb thing that we overheard. Right. And so everybody starts talking about it. Well, yeah, it's just another thing to throw you off your stage. So just do what's required of you. Like, for heaven's sakes, like IPSC makes you stand like straight up like a soldier, right? With your arms straight down. And like, I never practice from that position, but it's like, whatever. If I do have to do that, fine. Like, I'll just do it and like work through it and then just focus on shooting. So yeah, don't let it get in your head.
The even like the little team AC or whatever competition on like swing and bridge stage, like stuff like that, like that got in my head a little bit, right? Like, so
which one was
the
that?
idea was there, like, you win stuff if you shoot all out. You win something if you shoot all alphas on the stage, right? And I'm thinking, well, I was going to shoot all alphas anyway, but let's go. We'll just make sure and shoot all alphas. That's cool, Very, very last target on that stage, I had shot all alphas. I shot Alpha Charlie on the bobber. It goes away. I transition back to my couple other targets, clean those up, and then I'm like, yeah, why not? Transition back to the bobber and made up that Charlie with an alpha. And probably cost me, I think I looked at the time chart, like 0.6 something. I was like, well, that was so stupid. Like, that was not worth it in any way, shape, or form,
For base pads that you're not going to use.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, getting that kind of stuff out of your head and just focus on the process is key for sure.
Yep.
But it is what it is.
Yeah.
It was a fun match. I will say,
Was.
most fun I've ever had in a major, like, for sure. Part of it was like our squad was legit, and we were all like at the same time like appropriate amount of trash talking, but all like very encouraging as well.
Yeah.
And there were a pretty decent skill level disparity as well, and it was cool to see like everybody from like Billy and Isaac encouraging guys all the way down, and just everybody trying to like see everybody just shoot their best match. And I've been in squads where it feels like the guys there like, well, I just like want to crush you and so I don't like you, and like to me that takes a lot of the fun out of the sport, especially when you got to hang out with these dudes for 3 days, right? So that was really fun. Shout out to Eric for organizing that squad. Like that was a really good time. So yeah, pick your squad carefully and have a good time. Don't take yourself too seriously until it's time to shoot, and then dust that off and talk shit to the other guys. I think it's a good move.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That was something that definitely changed for me, I think, when I started shooting majors. Was, just just not taking myself too seriously, but really just taking the whole thing like too seriously. Like, I mean, I am not here to have fun. I'm here to do freaking work. And like, don't talk to me, like, I'm not that I was being like rude to people or whatever, but man, I was not there to have fun. I was there to work. And that's not necessarily the best headspace to be in, like, as it turns out, for me anyway. Like, you don't want to swing too far the opposite direction. Like, it's not a party either. You don't want to like be having so much fun that you're forgot to actually like memorize your stage plan sufficiently and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think loosening up and lightening up and having a good time can actually be a way better headspace for your performance.
Yeah,
for sure. For me anyway.
I would agree with that.
For me, it also just helps my confidence, just straight up. Like if I'm sitting there just to myself, just trying to focus, like I go up and my nerves are higher, or it's just a bunch of self-talk, right? Versus when, I can kind of think about, okay, how did that go? Okay, I'm happy with this. Yep. Like I need to maybe take note of this thing. And then it's just immediately like watching Nick shoot or watching Billy shoot or, whoever it is and be like, hell yeah, dude, like great run. Talk to them about their run. You're pacing targets. You're joking around again, like getting out of that, like just talking to yourself and internalizing everything as quickly as possible, I think is a fairly good move, at least for me. Like that. And then by the time I go up to shoot the next time, like I've just been like hanging out and actually feeling good the whole time, like for an hour before I go shoot again. Right. And I think that is like pretty massively helpful.
Yeah. One thing I'm going to be working on too, and this is not I think it's something that I've neglected, and it's because of the type of matches that I'm used to. Like I'm used to, like if I sprint to an area, like I'm going to sprint to an area and typically shoot a couple things on the move. And then I'm going to be in another area and shoot some things on the move. And like I've totally neglected the whole like sprint to an area and clobber targets, like completely static. And then like leave that area very aggressively, sprint to another one, and then clobber more targets. Like that is something that we saw like quite a bit of at Nationals. And I was like, man, I can't, it just felt so slow to me because I'm used to moving. And that's how I train too. Like everything, like hell in my training, I was shooting 25-yard targets like on the move. And then when you get there, it's like, no, you should probably like stand static and clobber those things. So I'm going to be working on that a bunch too.
Yeah, had some super interesting discussions with some guys on that this week who had some similar observations. And yeah, it's really interesting. I think a good balance is key. I mean, I obviously shot on the move a lot at Nationals and worked out pretty good. I think that for a lot of those guys, like it's not even about. I think it's dangerous. Like some people's takeaway, like watching what the top guys did, is like, oh man, well because they stood still and shot those targets, like they were able to just like really shred those things and shoot super fast, and that made it faster. And it's like, no, I don't think that's the right takeaway. Like, it's not about like I think thinking about it like, well, if I stand still, I'll be able to shoot those 25 targets really fast. Like that's kind of a dangerous headspace. And in reality, I think most of the time, like if you have to go somewhere, and even if shooting those targets on the move requires you to split a little bit slower, like it's almost always more efficient to shoot them on the move. The real reason I think, I was having talked to Eric about this a lot and so forth, is like that's really more of a risk management strategy.
Yes.
So it's like, man, if you can't, like, hey, maybe I can shoot those on the move and I can do that a little bit faster. But because of target difficulty, can I guarantee all alphas on those targets when I shoot them on the move? And it's like, well, probably not, right? Probably not. And so now the math comes in, and it's like, all right, well, does it make more sense to, yes, take a little bit longer to stand here still and shoot these from a stationary position, or does it make more sense to shoot them on the move and risk, potentially giving up some points, even if it's more efficient? And so learning how to stage plan, there was definitely some plans that worked out that I was not thinking were the move, that I was very surprised to see how well they worked out in practice for sure. But being knowing your skill set well enough to be able to kind of figure out, okay, if I try to shoot these targets in the move, like what are my likely hits going to be, and that sort of stuff is super important, I think.
That's exactly it. I think knowing your skill set is like the key thing there, right? Like Eric Raffel shoots on the move like maybe better than anyone I've ever seen in my life.
Sure.
And I hardly saw him shoot a single target on the move for all the stages that I watched. And I think I watched like 3/4 of his stages, like in person. And like it was just a decision that he was making. Can he do it? Yes. Did he need to do it to win? No, the way he was positioned after day 2 or during day 2, like there's no reason to take that risk. The perfect example for me was, I think it was stage 9. It was the last stage in zone 2 A or whatever. And it was the one where we started kind of on the left side, and there was a little window on the left, and then there was 3 steel and a popper, and then you kind of come out from around this whole like little wall and go down the corridor, right? So on the way up, there is an open target and a no shoot partial, and they're maybe like 8 yards away, right? They're not very, maybe 10 yards away. So I take the open on the move, right? And then I was planning on just stopping or like kind of pausing to shoot the no shoot partial, and I just like kept moving. Like at the time, I made it like an executive decision or something like that, and just kind of kept pushing and kept walking, and freaking plugged the no shoot, right? And it was one of 2 no shoots that I had for the entire match. And it was just because, like, what is it most efficient to roll through that at a walking pace and never have to stop and then start again? Absolutely. Was it the right call? Like at that point in the match, like definitely not. Right. Like that one shot probably cost me multiple placements, like in the grand scheme of things. Right. So just things like that. It's like, man, like at a major, the strategy is completely different. If you're trying to see how much you can get away with, like how much can I shoot on the move, like just where I shoot almost everything on the move, and you're going to do that at a local as practice, awesome. Like good for you. I think that's a cool thing to try and a cool thing to experiment, but like that is not the place at nationals on day 3.
Well, some locals are like totally set up to shoot on the move.
Correct.
Like Go Shoot is set up to shoot on the move.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I think this nationals, like, I mean, sure, there were some stages that, you know, were more beneficial to shoot on the move, but like a lot of them, it just, I don't know. Like you say, it was like, man, if you do that, you're just adding risk.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's that's the thing for me. It's not like shooting on the move is bad. Far from it.
Definitely not.
It's an absolutely crucial skill to have in the toolbox, based upon stage design, or you know whatever the shooting challenge is that you're working on. Knowing what's most appropriate is huge. Like you guys said, based upon primarily your skill set as well. So
yep,
good stuff. I know we're all teaching in the morning and probably about time to wrap this deal up, but hopefully that was some helpful takeaways from our big match for all y'all that are listening. And if you got any questions about nationals or anything we talked about here, feel free to drop them below. We'll do our best to get to those. Until next time, if you're not following these guys or looking to train with these guys, all of their information is down below. Please make sure to follow Nick and Brennan. Train with me, get a chance. Guarantee you won't regret it. Until next time, speed up and get your hits. Thanks.